is really great, and we're looking forward to a great demo from him, basically sharing his expertise and experience with Microsoft Teams and also Valo Teamwork. So just a quick introduction about Optimum before we move forward. As I mentioned, Optimum is a Valo partner, and our core competencies or focuses around modern software solutions. We focus on Office 365 and cloud solutions. So when it comes to things like SharePoint Online, setting up intranet and extranet, Microsoft Teams deployments, Power Automate and automation in the Office 365, and also BI. Those are the areas of expertise that our team brings to the table. And the reason why we're partnering with Valo is because Valo is just such a great tool in so many different areas to be added on to Office 365, and it just increases the capabilities of that platform. So when we see it being a good fit for our customers, we basically bring Valo into the picture and make that part of the solution for them to be able to really maximize their Office 365 investment and the user adoption of that environment. What we are going to talk about today from Optimum's standpoint is really that management consulting side of Microsoft Teams, being able to understand the governance and administration challenges of Microsoft Teams and providing some strategies and techniques to help organizations with those. And what Vlad is going to be demoing today is the product itself, which is Valo Teamwork, and kind of showing that how that could address the challenges of Microsoft Teams governance. So with that said, we're going to start talking about some of the common challenges of Teams governance, and I know, again, we can list a lot more. These are, again, some of the common ones that a lot of organizations are facing or dealing with, and it's kind of worth mentioning them here. I think everybody on this webinar will probably agree that the reason why we run into so many governance challenges with Microsoft Teams, really twofold. One is how easy it is to just get Microsoft Teams and kind of start using it and start inviting other people to it. So before you know it, and if you don't have a right strategy and vision for that before you begin, what's going to happen is that a lot of organizations, especially post-COVID and with the need of being able to quickly collaborate remotely with each other, a lot of organizations just start deploying Teams to their team members, and then they just push the button and go. And then before you know it, what's going to happen is there's a lot of content created, there's a lot of different channels and teams and groups created, and then the maintenance of that environment becomes a nightmare. So we would like to really mention vision and a strategy as a common challenge, because most organizations actually skip that step in their Teams rollout, and they jump from let's deploy Teams to let's start using Teams, and they're kind of missing all of the steps that should go in between to ensure that you have a proper governance and maintenance process in place before your team can actually get started. And if that governance and that vision and strategy is not defined and put in place correctly or properly, then many organizations may run into the risk of having compliance challenges and risk of basically exposing their data and information in a wrong way, or running into a lot of chaos with the data and documents inside that environment. Another thing is that even if you have a governance in place, and even if you had a strategy and a plan to roll out Microsoft Teams, once you are using Microsoft Teams, then monitoring and reporting and maintenance of that environment is its own challenge as well. So even if you have all of the right steps with your governance, there's still a lot of gaps or a lot of areas of opportunities or improvement when it comes to how you can monitor your environment and maintain it the best, and how you can get the reporting that you would really need in order to know what's going on in your environment. Another very common challenge of Microsoft Teams is external access. Should your organization allow that? Because it's a very powerful thing, and if you don't allow it, then you're probably going to be missing some features and capabilities. But then at the same time, if you allow it, what are the rules and governance and policies around that external collaboration? Who can get access to what? What are the rules around guest accounts? And if you don't think about those ahead of time before you roll out Microsoft Teams, then you're and you allow those external collaborations, and what's going to happen is that your people are just going to find a way to invite other people from other organizations into their teams, and then there is a risk of exposing your data and documents that might be confidential or sensitive. So understanding and putting your policies around external collaboration is extremely important before you even start using Microsoft Teams. Same thing with content and document lifecycle management. If you don't have a solid document management practice in place and you don't have the policies around document generation, version controlling, retention policies, the place that you want to store your documents, are you going to store everything on SharePoint, or is it OneDrive, or what's going to happen to duplicate copies of documents if people have it in different groups and it's the same document being placed in 3 different SharePoint sites or 3 different groups? Thinking about all of them and making sure that you have a solid document management structure in place and the governance around it is extremely important. Again, without that, a lot of companies find themselves in the situation where there is so many different groups and document libraries and OneDrive folders created, and a lot of them are basically hosting the same document or duplicate versions of the same document. Another common challenge in Microsoft Teams is app management. So as you know, and if your organization does not restrict that, almost everybody can go in and start adding apps to Teams. And that's great because, again, you get a lot done and you get what you need. But at the same time, how do you know that every app that is being added, that's the right one, it's secure, it's been vetted out, and it's the right application for your organization. So not only the compliance and security aspect of it, but also the fact that the more apps you add, the more your team is getting, basically your data is getting distributed across multiple apps, and then it's going to be very hard to manage and govern those apps and make sure that you know what data is being shared or is being put in those apps. So it could become a huge nightmare very quickly if you do not have the proper governance and proper policies around app management. Same thing goes with teams and channels creation. Everybody in your organization to create teams and channels, you're going to find yourself in a situation that there's so many different teams and you're a member of so many of them and you have no idea why you're even part of something. And then the question comes around permissions and who should see what, and are we having duplicate channels and teams, or as far as when you're done with that team, so with that challenge, how should you archive it or should you delete it? So all of those, again, policies around creation of that, of those channels and teams is extremely important before you get started. And that, again, before you roll out Microsoft Teams, otherwise, before you know it, it's going to be too late, basically, to be able to handle that and manage that. Same thing with recertifications of basically doing regular audits and making sure that people have the right authority and the right access to the right groups, and removing any risks or any areas of, potentially having wrong people seeing sensitive information or sensitive documents in the environment. So each one of these categories that we have here on its own can actually be a very large area of a large challenge for governance. And for each one of those categories, at a minimum, for the ones that we're listing here, you should have a governance plan and a governance policy in place to know exactly how you want to handle each one of them. The good news is that there are some tools and there are some ways of basically automating some of these governance steps. Like, for example, rather than allowing everybody to create teams and channels, you can create a Power Apps form that would basically people submit to request for a teams and a channel to be created, and then it basically goes through an approval process and it gets vetted out with the permissions and everything before it's provisioned. So there are some automations that can be done, but the challenge is that in order to have a full governance in place in Microsoft Teams, you will have to basically glue together so many different tools and apps and solutions in order to be able to cover all of these areas that we've mentioned here. So it becomes really important if there is a tool that can address most of these governance needs and basically help you automate and take care of them automatically as much as it's possible. here are some of the questions that you should be asking yourself when you are defining your governance in your organization. And again, a lot of them are already addressed in the previous slide, but we just wanted to list those questions in case if somebody is working on their governance model. Again, these are the areas you should pay attention to. It's extremely important to know and define in your governance plan that who should be able to create teams and groups and channels, and for what purpose should they be created. Because as I mentioned, if you just leave it open and everybody can create as many teams and groups as they want, before you know it, it becomes a nightmare to monitor and manage. The same thing goes with what is the process of creation. Should we let everybody do it themselves, or should we kind of send everything through an IT channel or an approval process before teams and groups can be provisioned? Same thing with your internal and external access and ownership of data and content. Who needs to be able to see what, and is external access allowed? And if it's allowed, what types of contents and documents are allowed to be shared externally, and what needs to be protected and secured? Again, the same questions around the applications and apps that can be used in Microsoft Teams, even your naming conventions, as far as creating different teams and groups and channels, and should we use a unified naming convention to make sure that we can easily find things, and when you look at something 2 months later after you create it, it still makes sense to you and you know exactly what you're looking at. Same thing with, again, archiving, deleting, and saving content in Teams, making sure that the backend SharePoint and OneDrive structure is supporting a solid document management structure, and you don't have your documents randomly stored in multiple places. And also really looking in the market and seeing what tools and solutions are out there that can help you automate the governance of Microsoft Teams, because as you can see here, there is really a lot that goes into it, and expecting an IT admin to be able to stay on top of all of them and try to do everything manually, it's not an ideal, or it's not a realistic expectation. So if you can find tools and solutions that helps you with the automation of that process, for example, provisioning teams or the reporting or the maintenance of that environment, the best recommendation is to go ahead and use those solutions, because as I mentioned, as powerful as Microsoft Teams is, it can also become the biggest nightmare of your IT organization if it's not governed and managed properly. With that, we would like to present Valo Teamwork as a potential solution for Microsoft Teams governance. And for the rest of the time during this webinar, we're going to focus on seeing a live demo of the product, and also kind of comparing how Valo Teamwork can really add value and can really help you with the governance and maintenance of the environment, versus if you didn't have the tool and if you had to do everything in Microsoft Teams yourself. So we're going to have a comparison between Teams out of the box and then what Valo Teamwork would add on top of that to allow for better automation and governance of your environment. I'm going to quickly introduce Valo for the people who are not familiar with it, and then I will pass it on to Vlad at this point for him to talk more about the Teamwork product and give you guys a live demo of that. So Valo is an add-on solution for Office 365 and also the SharePoint on-prem environment. And not only it provides the team governance and maintenance solution, but it's actually really a comprehensive package of so many different features and add-ons. Valo is very well known for the intranet product. Valo has a very strong intranet and extranet product. It's like an intranet in a box, and it's like an add-on that gets installed inside your 365 and allows you to very quickly create advanced intranet and extranet portals that has a lot more features and capabilities than the out-of-the-box SharePoint, especially when it comes to user experience and branding and some of the additional features that you would not be able to get in SharePoint unless you do customization in that environment. Also, Valo provides a very strong mobile app solution that your team can potentially use. Rather than using the SharePoint app, they will be using the Valo app, and with that, they get access to all of the features of Valo plus everything in your SharePoint environment. Valo also has other add-ons such as idea management and different things like social and multiple languages and all of that. But again, the focus of today's webinar is on Valo Teamwork, which is used for better managing and maintaining your Microsoft Teams environment and applying governance to that. So with that, Vlad, I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to you. If you would like to share your screen or just talk over this slide, and then we can let you share a screen for the demo.
I'll share my screen right away. There we go. In a few seconds, you should be seeing it here. Can you just confirm? Yes, perfect. Yes. So thank you very much for the great first part, Notion. Those are definitely very important things to take care about as you plan your groups and team strategy, especially in today's world where we're all remote, we're not all in the same office, in the same meeting, deciding, okay, who's going to create a group, who's going to do what, and we end up having 3 or 4 groups or collaboration workspaces for the same thing. And after that, it kind of falls on IT like, hey, IT, can you merge those together really quick? And of course, there's no tools built in to do that. So if you don't plan it and you don't do it properly from the start, it can generate a lot more work. As Notion said, Valo Intranet is really, I like to say, a digital workplace in a box product. We don't only have the intranet or teamwork, we have 4 different products that can be either together or standalone. But in this webinar, we're going to be focusing on. So what is Valo Teamwork? First of all, from an end user point of view, Valo Teamwork is a location. It's a page inside my intranet, or it's an app inside Microsoft Teams where with a single look, I can see all of the different groups or the different collaboration workspaces, I should say, that I'm a member of, whether those are Microsoft 365 groups, Yammer connected groups, or Microsoft 365 groups with a team attached, or standalone SharePoint sites that might be classic sites, that might be standalone modern team sites. I can see all of those in a single view. By default, it's personalized, it's trimmed to only the stuff that you have access to. So it's not like you see all of the thousands of sites from your tenant. Personalized to the stuff you have access to. I can go in and let's say I'll go on this one over here. As when you configure teamwork, you can decide for each type of collaboration workspaces, what type of tools do I want my employees to use? So I can say, for example, for a project, I want to see SharePoint, the quick link to the shared documents library and planner here as quick links. But maybe for a community site, I want to have a link to Yammer, to the Yammer community or to the Teams team and things like that. And I can also link to third-party tools because as much as I'm a Microsoft fanboy, I know that not every company is only using Microsoft tools. You might be using Salesforce for your CRM. You might be using Trello for your tasks instead of Planner. And you can also link to those third-party tools. I can also go into the Documents tab here. And this is probably the one that I use most often. The documents seems I think I've been on this session way too long. I've been letting it open for a while. But inside the documents tab over here, I can see the latest documents I've been working on. So I go to lunch, I take a day off, I come back. Instead of going through different groups, different links to re-access the stuff I've worked on last, I can see all of them here, all of my latest documents, as well as the documents from my groups that other people have modified. This way, I don't need to set email alerts or things like that on 5 different libraries. I got this single pane of glass where I can see what's been happening inside of my groups. when I go to discussions over here, again, single pane of glass to see all of my Outlook conversations from all of the groups I'm a member of, so I can really see them in a single location, make sure I don't miss any of them, because you don't want to have 10 of them inside your Outlook. This, like, you always have new messages. You probably want to keep that separate in order to keep that inbox a bit more focused. And lastly, the last tab is I can also discover groups. This is very useful if you have a lot of public groups like communities and things like that. What you can do is when a new employee joins, they don't know about the foodie club, about the walkers club, and things like that. And it usually takes them a long time to find the communities inside of your organization. With the Discover Groups tab, you can see all of the public groups inside of the organization and join them. So this HR usually loves this because it allows people to find friends, create relationships inside of a company, and as I always say, become part of the family a lot faster. If I go back to the sites here, we talked a lot about provisioning and governance. Probably from an IT pro or management point of view, one of the coolest part of Teamwork is the request process. If you look at what's available with Microsoft 365 out of the box, is that you can either enable everybody to create groups or you cut it down to nobody. There is no in between. Now, of course, if you have Azure AD P1 and you pay the $5 per user per month, what you can do is you can group of people that can create Office 365 groups, but again, they cannot go through an approval process. You cannot have templating. So this is why I'm really excited about what we have with Teamwork. As a user here, I can go click on new group or site, and I'll be able to see all of the different collaboration templates that my company has created. Now, if we take a look at the technical stuff behind, a project collaboration group might be a Microsoft 365 group with a Microsoft team attached with 3 or 4 channels with different apps. On the SharePoint site, it might have some branding attached to it. Maybe it's going to have an issue, a risk list, is going to have a contacts web heart on the homepage. As a company, I can capture that template and be like, okay, this is what a project is like in our organization. So then I will click on project and let me go click on next. Here, I will need to enter metadata. Remember, when you create a team or a group in the default uh, options, you just enter the name, private or public, but you don't really have any information on what that actual group is for. The description is probably optional. And 5 years down the line, when you're going to try to figure out what was this group for, and all of the owners will have left the company, you're going to be like, okay, do we need it? Do we not? What do we do with this? By capturing information at the group creation process, so I can have, for example, the description be mandatory, and I can also have custom metadata specific to that template. So for a project, I maybe want to ask, okay, what's the project manager, start date, end date, what's the project ID? So 5 years down the line, even if none of the owners are there anymore, I know, okay, I have a project ID in here. I can actually go look it up and see what was that project. And because personalization is one of the big topics of the digital workplace, we're not going to ask for a community site or a team site. We're not going to ask them to provide us for a project ID. It makes no sense. So for a team site, I maybe want to have the team leader. For a community site, I maybe want to have, okay, who's the HR sponsor for it from HR that approved this community? So I can really capture different metadata depending on the type of template of collaboration workspace that I want to create. So let me call it project XYZ here. If there's any IT folks on the call, there's also the naming conventions that you can implement. So if you have Azure AD Premium, you like the naming convention functionality, you can say that, okay, let's have the user's department as part of the name or the user's country. If you're an international organization, you can leverage all of that great stuff. After I enter all of this, it doesn't even allow me to click on next until I actually enter all the information. Let's add my good friend Yuha in here as group members, project manager. Let's search for Annie here. Let's add Annie as the project manager. Let's set a start date. Let's put an end date. Project status is okay. 1 to 3. Project type is, let's put it to consulting. Great. What did I hear? Great. After I would click on next, I'm not going to go through the approval process for the sake of time, but once I click on next, I can either decide if I want to create that project site right away, or if it goes through an approval process. And because we use Power Automate in the back, and I mean, we encourage customers to use Power Automate, but if you use Nintex, K2, Webcon, or any third-party workflow software, it would work as well. You can have some advanced workflows. You can say, okay, for a project site, it goes to the PMO for approval and then to IT. But for a community site, it goes to HR for approval. You can even create more cool advanced workflows. You can do stuff like, okay, if somebody from the PMO department created a project site, it goes and gets created without an approval. But if somebody from IT creates a project site, then we need an approval. So you can add all of this logic that allows you to request approvals just at the right time. Because remember, we want IT to be an enabler and not a blocker. So we don't always want IT to be the approver. We want to implement intelligent approvals depending on the scenario. Because I have all of that information on creation, I can also create my own filters. So here, if I go on category, I can see all of the different types of collaboration workspace that I have. So let's say I want to see only my projects, and then I can say, okay, only were the ones where the project manager is Annie, or maybe where the project manager is myself, because I want to see my projects as a quick glance. I can also, of course, filter by state and everything. So this is the end user view, and something that, of course, I forgot to mention a bit earlier. You can also favorite some of them. So if you want to show them at the top and kind of make sure you always have an eye on them, you can favorite some of them. Now let's talk a bit about the admin view, which I find really cool. If I go on the Teamwork admin site here, I can see all of the different teamwork orders. So what are all of the different collaboration workspaces that have been requested and that are currently pending? You see here we have a bunch of them pending. I can approve or reject it from here. Maybe the person that was supposed to approve it is out of office, goes back to us. We can approve it from here directly if we want to, or we can maybe edit the order details. Maybe my user ordered something, and as an approver, I went in there and I said, hey, this makes no sense. What do you actually want? Why are you requesting this? I can go talk to them and then be like, okay, now I understand. Let me fix something up for you, and then I will approve it. From a templating point of view, creating a template is super easy. Let's say, and there's multiple ways to create it. Of course, we support all of the advanced ways for you techies in this webinar. Maybe PNP templating and things like that. You can always do that. But the easiest way that I honestly find to do it is, I'll keep using the project site because that kind of relates to everybody. I go to somebody from the project management department and I tell them, create me what's the perfect project site for you. Let's work on it together. Create me that perfect project collaboration workspace. After that, I can go click on new template here and I can actually capture it from an existing group. So let's say I'll select the IT team here. Okay, I want to start from this one. And I can decide, okay, do I want to keep the channels or not? Do I want to keep the tabs and the apps or not? Because my collaboration group might not only be a blank list or things like that. I might have line of business application, things like that. Maybe inside of the planner plan, I'm going to have some built-in tasks, like maybe even for the project manager, the first tasks that are there, add the members, uh, fill in this, and that. So I can capture those starting tasks from the start. Next up, I can give it a name and I can say, for example, for this type of, I'll call it confidential project as an example. For this type of project, I want to only allow people to create a private group. I don't want them to allow to select public. If they want a confidential project, it must be private, and I'm not going to allow external user, and I don't even want them to see this option. Why would I want them to see an option they cannot select? So I'll take it out. Or maybe you want them to know that it's forced by them and you want them to see it. So a lot of flexibility in how you actually create your templates and you manage them. And even if sometimes we want to allow a user a really open experience, sometimes we want to lock it down. And by using Teamwork, you can really find that balance of when do you want to when do you want to allow users to just create some sites without approval? And when does it need to go through approval? Do you want to allow them to select if it's private or not? Or do you want to force an option on them? And of course, I also have some really nice analytics. So I can see, okay, how many project sites do I have? How many team sites, steering groups, and things like that. I can also see what week they have been created and how did it grow. You can see, of course, this is a demo environment, so you're not going to see a lot of action, but I can see, let's say if I look at the quarters, you can see in Q1, I only had 13 project sites, while in Q4, I'm at 30 project sites in total. So I can follow the evolution of where I'm at, and I can spot anomalies. I can also see what are the new groups that got created, how many groups got archived, and if I go here, privacy again, how many are public, how many are private, how many of them have external users enabled or not. And we're also working on a bunch of other governance features. For example, a report of, do you have any user, any group that has only one owner? Because maybe our governance says that we need to have two owners per group to make sure there's no group that's orphaned and things like that. So really, Teamwork has features for both the end users to quickly access and request content, and for admins to create templates easily, approve when needed or create when not, and keep an eye on what's happening in your Microsoft 365 tenant. Notion, I think I was able to do it in only 20 minutes to give us some time for a Q&A. Did I miss to show anything? Or is there anything you wanted to talk about more? Oh, did I put Notion to sleep here?
No, I was on mute. Sorry about that. No, I think that was a great demo. I think if you're ready, we can open it up for Q&A and let the attendees ask questions.
Oh yeah, for sure. And let's stay in the demo here. So if there's any questions, we can show them directly.
Yes, and feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you might have.
Hi, this is Bernd. We are just about to start using Valo, and I'm interested in this teamwork conversation. Was it conversations or messages? And you said that it's discussions. You said this is Outlook discussions. Does this mean emails, or does it bring together messages from different systems?
So let me actually go to portal.office.com here. So you have, I always say, multiple types of Microsoft 365 groups, but most of them, what they have is they have an Outlook mailbox created with them. So if I go into Outlook here, I go into my groups. You can see I have the groups here, and it's all of the emails that have been sent to the group. So what the discussion tab does is aggregates all of the emails sent to the group in a single pane. So I don't have to go and view all of them here. And you see there's like have to click more, have to go through all of them. So this is what that tab aggregates. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, okay, thank you. I was hoping that also some channel conversations would be pulled in here, but I see it's not the case.
So we've been looking at integrating Teams as well, but a lot of customers said that they actually prefer to keep Teams separate. And then from Teamwork, I can view let's say I'm in Teams, I can view the Outlook conversation here, as a lot more people are communicating with Teams now. So I understand the need, but we've got a lot of feedback that this is a lot easier for people to follow in our studies, that people prefer to keep team stuff in Teams and have Outlook in Teams instead.
That would be very cool, but there we depend on Microsoft.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Okay, thanks, Vlad. So with that, we can conclude the webinar. And please feel free to send us any questions that you might have after this webinar. If you would like to see a more in-depth, detailed demo of the solution and maybe talk about the specifics of your organization's needs, reach out to me or Vlad, and we'll be more than happy to line up a time for you and have a more like a one-on-one demo for your organization. And again, if you're interested in doing the free assessment with us, email me or Vlad, and we will be happy to get our technical resources working with yours and performing that assessment for you. With that, I would like to thank everybody who joined today, and we look forward to the future events with you participating. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, bye.